This is the third video in this series, Top Strongest Characters in One Piece. If you have not watched those other two videos, the links are in the description. I did hint in the previous video that this video will be about Mihawk. I was quite excited about making this video because this is the first video on my channel that I am making about Mihawk. Anyway, I think that Mihawk is one of the strongest characters in One Piece. Mihawk has two titles, the title of the greatest swordsman in the world and of the Shichibukai. First, let's focus on the title of the greatest swordsman. Considering how many strong warriors the One Piece world has that are capable of doing incredible things, but when it comes to swordsmanship, no one comes close to Mihawk. This is a huge achievement. Usually the writers, they don't like to give their characters absolute titles, because then it becomes harder for them to write the story moving forward. And it's harder to surprise their readers or viewers, because then people have a certain expectation for that character. There are only two other titles like this in One Piece. One did belong to Whitebeard, he had the title of the strongest man in the world, and the other title belongs to Kaido, he is the strongest creature in the world. So Mihawk is in a great company here. Mihawk, besides being the #1 swordsman in the world, he is very strong physically. And this is one of the reasons that make him one of the strongest characters in One Piece. Usually you don't expect a swordsman to be strong physically because they train with swords, learning the techniques and styles and coming up with their own new stuff. But in Mihawk's case, even if he does not use a sword in a fight, he still will be very strong because of his physical strength. Here are two examples. Number 1. When Mihawk fought Zoro, he did stop Zoro's 3 swords with that small knife. Mihawk did not stop Zoro's swords because he is the greatest swordsman, because no skills are needed for doing something so simple. This was not some kind of special technique, but it was all down to his strength. Even Zoro was surprised how Mihawk was able to stop his attack so easily with that small knife, considering that Zoro did use his best move. And the other example is when Mihawk did attack Luffy, and the shockwave that this attack did create did cut the iceberg that was created by Aokiji when he froze the tsunami that Whitebeard did create. Mihawk's arm swing is so powerful that the aftermath of his attack can cut a huge iceberg. Do you see what incredible physical strength Mihawk has? Just to be clear, if anyone thinks that Mihawk was able to cut that iceberg due to him using Haki, well, he did not use Haki in this case. He did use Haki when he did try to attack Whitebeard at the beginning of the war, and that Haki attack was deflected by Jozu. But this was not the case here, because Oda made it clear because you cannot see any sign of Haki. And if you look at the way how the ice is cut, it's very different. When Mihawk did use Haki, the ice was split open by force, and there is debris. While for the second attack, the ice is cut clean. If you were wondering why Zoro trains his body by lifting weights instead of just training in the way of the sword, now you know, because that's what it takes to be at Mihawk's level. He really did set high standards. No wonder that Mihawk is bored and goes around the world seeking for challengers. Mihawk in the past used to duel with Shanks. It seems like Shanks took pity on him and decided to help him about this problem, because Shanks is not a swordsman. Just because someone uses a sword, they don't become automatically swordsmen. About these duels between Mihawk and Shanks, we know that there was no winner. These duels were so epic that everyone knows about them, even Whitebeard. And because there was not a winner in these duels, we can understand clearly that Shanks is not a swordsman, but his weapon of choice is a sword. Because otherwise, the title of the greatest swordsman in the world would belong to Shanks as much as it does to Mihawk. If you are thinking that the reason why the title belongs to only Mihawk is due to Shanks losing his arm and he is not as strong as he used to be, this is not the case, because Shanks did become a Yonko after he did lose his arm. If Shanks is strong enough to become a Yonko, he is also strong enough to duel with Mihawk as he did before. On Shanks' Jolly Roger there are 2 swords, and usually the Jolly Roger represents some of the features of the captain. Could it be that Shanks was using 2 swords to fight before he lost his arm? And this is why Mihawk does not want to duel with Shanks anymore? No, this is not the case either, because you can see in the first chapter that Shanks is using only 1 sword. And also in that flashback when we see Shanks when he was younger, he was using only 1 sword. But then why did Mihawk say I'm not interested in fighting someone who has lost an arm? Like I said earlier that if Shanks is strong enough to be a Yonko, to be at the same level as Whitebeard and Kaido, he is for sure strong enough to fight Mihawk even with 1 arm. There are a couple of things in this meeting that do not make sense, so I will not pay that much attention to it since it was the early days of the story. Which is normal when it comes to the stories that are written in weekly basis, because things do change all the time. The writer always tries to expand the story and also make it better. Here are some of the things that I found odd about this meeting. First of all, how did Mihawk track down Shanks? Especially since that island did not look to be inhabited. And then he said that I'm not here to fight since you have lost an arm. So he met Shanks prior to this at least once. And that's how he knew that Shanks cares about Luffy, because he told him. And Shanks at that time did not have his left arm. But anyway, since apparently Mihawk thinks that a Yonko is not a worthy opponent for him to duel, does this mean that he is stronger than a Yonko? Well, the answer to this question is no. There is only one reason why the answer is no. Because there is only one person who is stronger than the Yonkos, and that person is Buggy. But in all seriousness, why isn't Buggy killing all the Yonkos? Is it because he is very merciful? But all jokes aside, since Mihawk is the greatest swordsman in the world and he did fight Shanks, is he Yonko level? Based on the things that we know so far about Mihawk, I think no, he is not Yonko level. In One Piece world, swords are used by some very powerful characters, and being the best in this field is a great achievement. But for me, that's not enough to be Yonko level. One of the requirements to be a Yonko, I think, is to be capable of doing unique and impossible things. Let's take for example Blackbeard, who got the title of the Yonko recently. He has the power of the two devil fruits, and based on the history of the One Piece world, this was never done before. And the person who said this was one of the Goroses. These guys have access to all information, including the Void Century and beyond. And from the writer's perspective, it's very important to protect the titles that are given to the characters. The title of the Yonko is very special and important because very few people have it. If other people are at their level in terms of power, then it starts losing importance. At the beginning of the war, Mihawk did try to attack Whitebeard, and everyone there was surprised that Mihawk is eager to fight. But then he says that no, I just want to know the difference between us and that man. So Mihawk himself said that there is a difference between Whitebeard and us. Now, granted that Whitebeard had the title of the strongest man in the world, but so does Kaido. The other Yonkos, they are not as strong physically as these two, but they are capable of doing other incredible things, and that's why they are also at the same level as Whitebeard and Kaido. For example, Shanks has an incredible haki. So, based on what we know so far about Mihawk, I think he is not Yonko level, but he is one of the strongest characters in One Piece. Mihawk, besides having the title of the greatest swordsman in the world, he is also a Shichibukai. Usually, the title of the Shichibukai is given to those pirates who make a name among pirates, and they are influential, and of course they need to be very strong, otherwise the world government has no use for them. But Mihawk is not a pirate, nor does he have a crew or a ship, at least not that we know of. Maybe when Oda will reveal more about him, we will learn why he is alone. The other Shichibukai who has no crew or ship is Kuma, but we know the reason why he hasn't, because he is a revolutionary. So it could be that Oda has planned something similar for Mihawk as well, but it also could be that Mihawk is like Zoro. Zoro is not truly a pirate like Luffy is, who likes to sail the seas and go on adventures. Zoro's goal is to become the greatest swordsman in the world, and that's why he did join with Luffy, because he knew that he will face strong swordsmen in the Grand Line. When Kuma sent Zoro to Mihawk's place, he told Zoro that recently I made this island my home. Based on this, it seems like Mihawk does not have any family or relations to the place that he was born. If this is the case, then no wonder that he gets bored. He did not mind at all that Perona and Zoro were at his house, and based on this cover page, Perona is still living there. Is this due to him being a good guy, or... Anyway, Mihawk, besides being one of the strongest characters in One Piece, he is also one of the best characters in One Piece. He is very unique and mysterious. This is it for this video. Usually at the end of the other videos I gave you a hint about who will be the next video. But for now I will pause this series because I have plans for other videos that I want to make. One of those videos will be about a very mysterious character. And lastly, I want to ask you guys, who do you think are the strongest characters in One Piece? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching, like and share if you liked this video, and subscribe for more One Piece videos.